Welcome to this week's rant. This week's rant is entitled Connecting the Dots, and you'll see why in a minute. But before we get going, normal parish notices apply. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not hit the subscribe icon? If you want to be notified when content like this hits the channel, that's the bell icon for you. Consider becoming a member of the TMTG community. The Patreon address is down there somewhere, as are the Facebook and Instagram tags. Go tag me over there because that's where other announcements for the channel get made. But now, back to the video. So this video is called Connecting the Dots. And it's called Connecting the Dots for a very good reason. A long time ago, I acquired this thing, and I've been playing with this thing over the last couple of years, but I haven't really done very much to camera. And there is actually a very good reason for that, as the lights wipe me out. And that is trying to get the video signal from this thing onto a camera in such a way that it's not awful to read. So these things typically threw out a video signal in something called 240p, which is a fairly low res format. Now, back in the day, that was a high res format because that's what TVs could take. And if you look at the back of this thing, again, I'll bring this up towards the camera. On the back here, we've got a UF signal, then we've got composite video, and then we've got RGB. And this thing you could actually plug into the aerial socket of a terrestrial TV at the time, whether it was NTSC over in the States or PAL in the European Union. I'm not quite sure what other regions use, but it's a combination of the two, isn't it? But it would basically throw out a signal in the relevant format. And I think, if I remember rightly, I think you can actually change this from PAL to NTSC. But in essence, you could you put this in the back of the TV and you can use your normal TV for this computer. And I remember that because I had a ZX Spectrum, I had a Commodore 64, I had a couple of other machines, all used effectively an RF connector that went out the back of this into the back of the TV, and that's how I did. I used to sit there programming for hours. Yes, has it done me any good? Probably not. But that's what used to happen. Now, I have been using this predominantly with I have been using it with the composite output, which is these two things here. Okay, and that gives me a reasonably good signal on a TV. Problem is, when you put a camera against the TV and look straight at the screen, you get an awful rendition of what's going on the TV, which was so poor that it wasn't really usable for video of this sort of thing. So I had to do some thinking. One of the biggest problems you now have with modern day TVs stroke monitors is effectively they don't now support analog RF. Everything's going digital, and most of the TVs now have a digital signal, and definitely in the UK now we've switched off the old analog RF signals because we now have gone over to digital. So there's no requirement for manufacturers to actually create TVs or monitors that have that capability anymore, because we don't use it. Anyway, it was unusable anyway, so that's irrelevant. It's a relevant conversation. So what I then did was I then upgraded to use the RGB, and I can use the RGB quite merrily on my TV, which is up on one of my storage racks over there. So that's the RGB connector, goes in the back of the computer into the RGB socket. And for those of you who don't know what this is called a Euroscart connector. Very, very popular in the UK and in Europe, not so popular elsewhere in the world. Don't know why, but that's what it is. It's a SCART connector. Okay, and most of the TVs that have been issued in Europe for the last 30 odd years have had a Euroscart connector on the back of them, which means you can effectively plug this thing into a modern TV. Great. I can now get a reasonable picture onto a TV. What I can't do is I'm still having trouble connecting or photographing, videoing the screen. Several reasons for that. Number one, the poor output this thing gives out. Okay, that's the first issue. It's not particularly a clean output. And the second reason is the fact that you have something called Hertz flicker, which is all to do with the mains and the refresh rate of the screen. I was getting a better picture, but I wasn't getting a picture I was particularly happy videoing. But that's how to get that. So the question is now, how do I video what's coming out of this so that I can actually do a proper video to screen? So I turned to the gaming community. Why did I turn to the gaming community? Well, most game consoles over the last 20 years, definitely sold within the European Union, have had one of these things. Okay, they've now moved on to sort of HDMI connectors, but back in the day, if you wanted a really good signal out of your SNES or PlayStation or whatever it happens to be, you went and bought one of these because it plugged into the Euroscart connector and it was an RGB output. Oh, I should mention, by the way, that not all RGB outputs are the same. So this cable will work quite merrily with my Yamaha CX5X computer, CX5M computer. Okay, this will work with that. This will not work with my Roland samplers. For that, I have to have another cable that is wired slightly differently. And it's rather important, I should say this now, it's rather important that you actually use the right connector. It's not so much this end, it's more this end, to connect. Otherwise you have the capacity, if it's not being correctly fused in here, of blowing the output board. So I just thought I'd mention that you need to actually make sure you buy the right RGB connector for the piece of equipment you're using. Now Roland are pretty much standard across their equipment where they have RGB outputs. So you know, I know exactly where to get one of those cables. I've got two of them actually for my Roland gear. This is for the Yamaha, and I have got another piece of equipment here which has an RGB output, and I've yet to source a cable for that. But that's aside. Okay, so I can get this onto a normal TV, a nice big sort of 20-inch display using Euroscart. Fab. Can't video it though. Go to the gaming community. They've been doing this stuff for years. I mean, there's some of the biggest YouTube channels are actually gamers. Showing you how to do, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons and God knows whatever else, and legacy consoles. And having spent many hours actually watching these guys and finding videos of how they've set it up. One of the things that came across very clearly was they use something called a frame master. Now, a frame master is a device from Japan. Yeah, why does that not surprise me? The home of the gaming console, Japan. So the frame master comes from Japan, and effectively it converts a Euroscart connector like that, and it outputs it in an HDMI format. Well, it does that by doing something called upscaling. The issue with the frame master, and the reason why I haven't gone down the route of a frame master at the moment, is because a frame master will set me back the better part of £350 to £400 by the time I've actually taken into account shipping. You can only buy these devices from Japan. There are some localish people who sell them, but they obviously sell them at a premium. So you need to go to the Japanese market really to get these things. And they need an independent power supply as well, so you've got to cough up for that, because the device doesn't come with one. Anyway, the frame master, and effectively, as I said, what it does, it upscales your low-res signal from this thing up to a 720 or a 1080p output. So that therefore you get a very, very crisp signal on your TV, and therefore you could theoretically video that, and something at 1080p does video better than something at 240p. Fair enough. You still are videoing the computer screen though, or the TV screen. That's a bit of an issue. I don't want to pay £400 for a frame master at this point in time if it's for an experiment. So a little bit more research, and this only arrived this morning. Okay, and this thing was recommended by several gamers on several channels. And one of the biggest problems you have with legacy gaming machines is this 1080p format. And a lot of gaming devices will quite merrily convert your signal from a lower frame rate or a lower quality to a higher quality, but most of them start higher than 240p. They won't touch a 240p signal. So a lot of the really early consoles and computers and stuff like that that supported RGB in this way, you can buy these devices. They're relatively cheap. They're not expensive. They're sort of, £50 or so, but they won't convert 240p. And that was one of the problems I had when I was doing the research, is finding a device that would do 240p. Anyway, I came across this device, again, made in the Far East. There you go. And this device will convert 240p. And now I've yet to plug it in, but I thought I'd do the video anyway so you can see how I'm going to connect the dots, and then you'll see a video showing you how I did connect the dots. And on this side you can see there is the Euro SCAR input. Also has an HDMI input for it, so you can actually run an HDMI input into it. And there is a power supply. This thing has to be powered by a 9-volt supply. And I didn't realise that when I ordered it, because I didn't order the 9-volt supply, so I've ordered a 9-volt supply now. And on the back of this thing, you can see there is an output for coaxial. Quite why that is, I've no idea. There's an audio feed, and then there's an HDMI output. Now this HDMI output can work, and it says it here on this button, if you can see that. There you go. It'll upscale to 720 and 1080p, and it'll also convert PAL or NTSC as well. Okay, so this is a truly sort of region agnostic little bit of kit. And the idea is you put your Euroscar in there, like so, and then you stick, and again these haven't come out of the boxes yet, because I had to go and buy a whole bunch of HDMI cables. Question is, how do you get into the box? Hang on a sec. Right, so there's your HDMI cable. HDMI cable goes in like that. That bit goes off to the telly. Okay, so now I have a 1080p signal. Still can't record it though. There's no way I'm still recording at the TV screen. What I want to be doing is pumping the signal directly into the recording device. Along comes the next bit of kit, which once again has to be powered, I might add, but they at least give you the USB cable to power it by. And this is a DVD HDMI splitter. There you go. Works up to 4K TV. Again, not expensive. I will go through how much each part of this costs. I'll put it in the video description below. So you've got power in on one side, HDMI in on one side, so effectively you come out of, I'm not going to hold this to the screen again, you come out of this, plugs into there, so that's your signal coming in from the computer, and then that side there goes off to the TV. But I'm left with another HDMI. And the reason for that is now what I need to do is I now need to get my signal into the computer so I can record it. And along comes this bit of kit. Okay, so HDMI comes out of the splitter like so, and it plugs into this, which is a capture card, HDMI capture card. Okay, now this won't work at 240p, but it will work quite merrily at 720 and 1080p. So because I've now upscaled it with this, to 720 or 1080p, I can now capture it with this. And that was the biggest problem that I was trying to solve here, was really getting the signal that came off this thing up to something I could capture on a computer with a capture card. There's the capture card, USB into the computer. There's a couple of drivers that need to be loaded onto the computer, but Bob's your uncle. I think I now have a working solution that will allow me now to actually start making videos about this and the samplers, where I can actually capture input directly into the computer. So there you go, connecting the dots. It's been, I have to be honest and say, I haven't been working on it full time. It's been one of those things that's been on the back burner with everything else that's going on. But it's been one of those things that's been really annoying me. So I thought, right, now was time to connect the dots. So there you go. That is how I have solved, well, hopefully I have solved my videoing issue relating to my CX5. And now I can show you what this thing can do. There's probably other videos on the internet that show you how to do that thing, but it's not done by me. And I like to do things my way, as you all well know. So, there you go, connecting the dots. And I'm going to shut up at that point because I've rambled for enough. One final thing this week. So, I acquired, not intentionally I might add, because I don't necessarily need them, but I acquired a whole bunch of these. Okay, these are, for want of a better word, disc carriers, the old style disc carriers, the sort of material, black material, backing, bit of hardboard in there, and then 4 pockets in there for carrying discs. And you know, I've used a couple of them for stuff I've been doing. You can carry quite merrily 20-ish discs in there. I don't need them. So below here, I'm going to put a eBay link, and I'm going to basically sell those off at £10 a pop. So if you want something like that for your discs, obviously click the eBay link. I have to be honest and say I'm not sure whether the postage to the US is going to make it worthwhile for you guys who are watching the US, but definitely for Europe it sort of doesn't come in too horrendous. So if you want one, follow the link, go get one. And that, for this week, is that. Now, don't be surprised if you see me looking like this next week, because I'm actually going to pre-record next week's video now. And the reason for doing that is because I'm not going to be around next week to record next week's video. So I thought I might as well do it now. And that's what I'm going to do. Live long and prosper. See you next time.